Continue to catch up with some people here at PRI Trade Show. We are with one of the owners of the Cedar Lake Speedway in New Richmond, Wisconsin. This is Brad Both. Brad, a minute ago we were talking about some news we're going to break here in just a moment here. We'll save that for 5 minutes or so from now. But talk about PRI. When you and I saw each other in the lobby last night, you said, I hadn't been here before. This is brand new to me. I asked Scott the same thing. It's day one. How overwhelmed are you so far?
Well, I drive in. I mean, that's the first, you're right. I drive in. The first person I see is you. I mean, literally, I was here to, I was calling Steve Sinclair from IRA and whatever else, and I was texting him, and I literally took 10 more steps, and all of a sudden you were right there. So I thought, my small world. So, but yeah, it's a fantastic, convention center, and the Lucas Oil Stadium is right next door, and I can't wait to get over there later on and see what's going on over there. But this is fantastic. It's absolutely awesome.
It's amazing, all the people in this industry. You know, our little dirt track section of this industry is little compared to motorsports in general, but just looking at this giant hall and that hall next door and the stadium and the hallways are packed and the tens and hundreds of thousands of people involved in this, pretty cool.
It is. And ironically, like I said, small world to see you, but that small world too. You're absolutely right about dirt track racing and whatever else, but you have all these other types of top fuel dragsters and all this other stuff here. But I can turn right around the corner and I find somebody else I know or talk to, so it's kind of cool.
It's very cool. Let's talk about Cedar Lake for a minute. You've been an owner there for you can tell the number. I was going to say it's approaching 24 years now that you and your partners have owned that place. Talk about from 24 years ago to now the knowledge you've gained first of all, but the transition from 25 years being an owner in motorsports.
The more things change, the more they stay the same type thing. The same old thing comes around. I think, just literally sitting back and having the patience and understanding to listen, that's probably my biggest thing that we probably had, we've had to learn is, you listen to, and I tell us to, our employees or the racers or our fans is that we're all, part of this together. It's a huge community. So, listening to their, needs, their wants, and sometimes you have to say no. It's a bad thing, but ironically, that's how you grow and that's how you make the sport better.
Well, and the truth is, everybody wants the same end game, right? I mean, the racetracks need to make money to survive. Racers need to race for money to keep funding their sport to be able to race. You need fans. You need sponsors. Everybody needs to work together. You said it. We're all one big community, and as long as everybody's working together, it should be somewhat fun. Hopefully it's entertaining and everybody's making a little bit of money. That's
correct. I agree. You're gonna bring it on the house now with your announcement? Or?
I mean, we can talk about it. We are in the WISSOTA Auto Racing booth for a couple reasons. Let's talk WISSOTA for a minute. Cedar Lake went back and sanctioned the WISSOTA Superstocks in 2023. First time a WISSOTA sanctioned class had been there in 20-ish years. It'd been a while since there'd been some WISSOTA sanctioned classes there. Seemed to go pretty well. I know you're on board in 2024 with the Superstocks again. Talk about the reason or the decision to make the Supers. I know the reason because I know the drivers, 99% of them had a WISSOTA license anyway, and why not race for points, yeah?
Yes, it was. When we actually signed back in, of course, we were, everybody's dealing with tire shortages the past couple of years, so that was a primary driver for why we decided to do that. And I know that, ironically, that's part of the equation, the solution, I guess. The other part of the answer is that WISSOTA's always been a very firm believer in trying to keep rules the same and whatever else. And ironically, this is the first time I ever went back to the rules and whatever else this past year and listened to that, and it was good. I learned a lot. Talked to a lot of other promoters. Again, more things stay the same type thing too, but yeah, so it was good for us to also, there's a lot of still the same core people that are still trying to make the sport better. That's good.
For sure. And then, in the area that Cedar Lake is, of course, the other tracks surrounding Rice Lake, Red Cedar, you go right around to Ogilvie, even there was WISSOTA sanctioned anyway, right? So you can share drivers, and maybe some new drivers that hadn't maybe been at Cedar the last few years can come check that place out, and maybe you hook them as well.
That is right. I know that we do branch out with other sanctioning bodies. Once in a while, we have a relationship with the USRA, obviously with WISSOTA, and we've kind of always been able to talk back and forth, even when we weren't really associated with WISSOTA for many years, just to make sure that we were in line so that guys could still come or gals could come over to the racetrack and actually race at my facility, and then literally just turn right around and go to another WISSOTA track then the next day.
For sure. And the interesting part to me forever about Cedar Lake and some of these other places, Cedar Lake specifically, right? World of Outlaw Sprint Cars, World of Outlaw late models, USMTS modifieds, USRA stuff, WISSOTA stuff. It really doesn't matter, right? You're in the perfect area close to the Twin Cities where there's enough racers and enough fans where you can branch out and kind of do whatever you want.
You're absolutely right. But as the world turns, though, too, is that it's getting harder for some people to actually, still putting a race car on the racetrack. So I think, ironically, with a lot of the changes that are coming for, in the future here, I'm hoping that the self-consciousness of saying, I love the whole idea and the premise of WISSOTA basically saying, let's keep the costs low or try to keep them as manageable as possible, keep the racers racing as long as we possibly can to make sure that they enjoy their hobby. And that's essentially what it is.
Well, one thing about that is, you'd have to correct me if I'm wrong, but when the Dash started, when Cedar Lake went NASCAR and then went away from NASCAR and the Dash Series started. So now there's, a dozen Dash Series races. Those are higher paying races than a regular Saturday night used to be a handful of years. So to keep racers on the racetrack, they need to be paid a little bit better. Cedar Lake did that kind of before anybody else 5, 6, 7 years ago.
Well, and obviously, we're a late model racetrack, as we always have been, and we have a lot of specials with that. But at the same time, as the ownership group of Bob and Chuck and now Chris, who's joined on a few years ago as well, we thought, at the same time, it's also nice to have reward the other classes. And so the guys that actually still put on the show, sometimes they put on a better show than late models. And so, nothing against any other classes, whatever else. So we decided, well, let's try to reward them by giving them a special, making them feel like they're wanted and make them feel like it's a really good opportunity for them to make money.
Perfect segue. So the month of money happens in July at Cedar Lake every year, whenever it happens. This year it's July. Midwest Mods, Super Stocks, Modifieds, Late Models each get a $5,000 to win event on their own night. USRA late models get an extra $1,000 to win night as well, so they get some extra. And then, of course, the USMS or UMSS, which you have non-wings and wing sprint cars, they have some specials throughout the year. Cedar Lake's their home track for both the non-wing divisions typically. So a lot of different stuff. Month of money is what we want to focus on. So first of all, it amazes me sometimes the car count that you get Midwest Mod Night specifically. There's 1 million of those around. The cool part about that event is it can be a USRA car or a WISSOTA car or a guy that doesn't do anything. They get to come in, run their own rules, and race for a whole bunch of money.
That is correct, and that's is a happy medium. And of course, I've always had this hammer in my back pocket said, if a guy or a gal is racing and he or she is basically just dominating. Not to divert from your question, but basically saying we have the ability to basically say, you're going to have to bolt on some lead, or we're going to have to make some changes to you specifically, because there's no way you should be winning, 90% of these races, because we do have a lot of talent at Cedar Lake. So with that, there is that. But to get back to your original question, though, is that by having those types of big races, whatever else, but also including other sanctioning bodies where they can intermix and whatever else. Now they still have to keep their same rule packages and whatever else. They can't cross over. They can't run a WISSOTA, a Hoosier tire and run a USRA car. They have to run the American Racer. But literally, there's been a lot of discussions about, okay, what can we do to make this maybe more even, something like that. So we're always, listening to those drivers, and when they talk about, let's make them a better matched type format. So, well,
and you mentioned it before, late model racetrack, which Cedar Lake's been known for. USA Nationals, one of the premier races in the country. It has been for 40-ish years now. It's been around for nearly 40. It's a long time. We're talking about WISSOTA late models for a minute here, though, and this is the news we're going to break. The Month of Money event in 2024, Saturday, July 19th, is
WISSOTA Challenge Series race.
It's going to be a WISSOTA Challenge Series race for the first time. WISSOTA Challenge Series, and you know it, I'm sure, but the first ever WISSOTA Challenge Series race in 1999 was held at Cedar Lake. First ever one, first initial year, first initial race. Mike Goodremote won that in 1999 in May. The Challenge Series went back to Cedar Lake in 2018. I'd have to look, 17 or 18, which was a regular Saturday night event. Challenge Series race was there. This one, though, is going to be the biggest paying Challenge Series race that Cedar Lake has ever had. $5,000 to win. Everybody's pretty jacked for that, yeah?
Well, I believe that that all leads up to that race, too, at Cedar Lake, because there's a lot of races that are happening that week. Is that correct?
Yeah, so Twin 25s at the Gondiclaw Speedway in Superior the night before, which is a huge event for the area and for their racetrack. Granite City in St. Cloud, we're breaking that right now, too, I guess, is the next day. So it's a really nice 3-day swing with that $5,000 right in the middle.
Yeah, and it's it's important to us to get as many racers as we can. Obviously, we don't have a problem with our big specials like the Masters or the USA Nationals, but for the and not really don't have a big problem getting it for the $5,000 win. But I know that when we got approached, obviously to how's the WISSOTA Challenge Series race on this event, and we listened to it, we thought about it, we pondered it. It was back and forth. What are we going to do it? And then we talked to you about this, and that's how we came to that conclusion to do it.
Yeah, and I think the cool part about it is, like Chris, one of the other owners, and I were talking about it, and the majority of the racers that race on a regular Saturday night are a WISSOTA licensed driver anyway. There are several maybe that aren't, but for this event, you're going to probably gain a handful of guys that only get there once a year just because it's not in their area and or they're busy at their home tracks or whatever. So like Scott Benson and I were talking about, sometimes when a tour race comes in, Midwest Mod, Street Stock, Late Model, whatever, you get those guys there. If they happen to run well, now you got them, and they get to come back to the next one and the next one and the next one as well.
Yeah, and it also is, I know that Cedar Lake sometimes is, some people think it's on their bucket list or whatever else to get there, and I think that's fantastic. Couldn't be more happy about that. And it's humbling. Honestly, it's really humbling for us. But yeah, to give the opportunity to some drivers that don't normally come out there, that's what we want to do, and we always love to have new faces come to Cedar Lake.
Sure. Last thing here, and I'll let you get walking the show here. You got a lot of steps to take today. Schedule's not quite out yet. I've seen a preliminary, and obviously you've seen a preliminary. It's very close. I know there's a couple things that are kind of being tweaked to fit some sprint car races in and kind of tweak what classes are being run. However, typical Cedar Lake schedule is dotted with lots of special events, whether it's sprint cars, late models, modifieds, doesn't really matter. What I've seen looks to be more of the same, looks to be a great schedule coming out again.
Yeah, you can pretty much pencil in from whatever we did last year to this year. It's pretty close to that. Now, we have heard, of course, as I mentioned earlier, we do listen to our drivers, we listen to our fans, and we also work with other touring bodies, whatever else, and so we're hopefully going to be doing a Dirt Race Central Street Stock special possible.
More breaking news.
Yes, more breaking news. We're still working on that as we speak. We also may have some other street stock events as well. Obviously we have the legendary 100 at the beginning part of the year as well as the end of the year, and then we're going to sprinkle a few more as well throughout the summer. So hopefully we get a lot more support. We got some great support, great turnout, great feedback from even some drivers that really want to see the streeters come back. Other drivers I'm talking, like Midwest Mods and whatever else, are like, yeah, it'd be great to have those guys back. So they were kicking in $100, $200 for to help to win, whatever else. So whatever we can do to help that cause, we likely would love to hear about that from other sponsors.
Well, and to finish up with that, back in the day, street stocks were big, right? Cedar Lake was a huge street stock racetrack for years and years, and the numbers dwindled, and that's why they went away. That's how it is. For several years at the legendary 100, there was 12 cars. Like, it wasn't great. And then all of a sudden, the class began to build again. And these last couple of years, you're right, the support's been great.
Yeah, when we scheduled the Steffa Street Stock Tour a few years ago, and we worked with that, and then last year, unfortunately, we just couldn't make it work. So, but this year, hopefully, we get that back, I definitely see that as long as we get the camaraderie and the support for those shows, I think we can still do some more. So.
Well, and again, the guys that don't get to race there weekly love that it's on the calendar if they can go.
Right, and there again, as you mentioned too, there's a lot of those guys that are involved with that organization. They're from Western Minnesota and the Dakotas, whatever else, and they come all the way over to, I think it's Red Cedar, I think, at the end of June, and so we're thinking maybe that Saturday night after that might be a good possibility for them.
Very good. Any other breaking news? We've broken a lot here. Otherwise, start your pedometer and get walking.
Well, let's see. We have our own banquet, I should say. It's very informal. It's very informal. So Cedar Lake has their own banquet up at Cedar Lake Casino up at St. Croix. It's on January 13th. We've already basically have that already sold out right now, but we do encourage any fans or any drivers, whatever else, to show up, say roughly around 8 o'clock at night, because that's when we kind of open it up to everybody and anybody that wants to show up. And so if you have anything and don't have anything going on Saturday, January 13th, please feel free to come up.
There it is, CedarLakeSpeedway.com. Schedule will be coming up pretty soon.
Thanks, Chris.
There it is. Thank you. That's Cedar Lake owner Brad Both.